Hey folks, welcome to the Generational Gap. I am Robert, your resident Gen Xer, and right over there is John, our resident millennial. John, how are you doing this evening?
Not
Nobody
too
cares.
bad, not too much.
Nobody cares.
All right,
Nobody,
fair
nobody
enough.
cares. And down below, you'll see tonight we have a special guest with us tonight from No Way Jose. We have Jose Galison. Is it Galison?
I go Galison. It's a made-up name, so it doesn't fucking matter.
Good. I like made-up names. The Jose was throwing me for a little bit. I was like, wait a minute. But anyway.
Yeah. No, I'm white as shit.
You can go there. That's fine. That's fine. Good to see everybody tonight. I see we have a few folks lurking around. I see Quest Fanning in the house and High Leaf in the house as well. Good to see you guys tonight. Make sure you're hitting that like button on your way in. And, if you're feeling froggy, jump down there in the description and throw us a coffee. We like coffee or a beer. Quest has thrown us beer, and I like beer too sometimes. It's all right. Jose's with us tonight, as I said, from No Way Jose. You can find some links for Jose down in the description as well if you're not familiar with him. Those links will send you to a few places where you can get familiar with him and watch him on YouTube, Twitter, and then you got some podcasts out there, right? I think I got your Apple link down there and Red Circle down there as well. I just grabbed some crap off your page.
It's all good. I mean, as long as you link to YouTube, it's fine. I have pretty much all the places I distribute it to. I have in the descriptions. I have the links to everywhere else. So if you can get to one place, you can get to all of them. So and I just got on Odyssey as well. I literally just got on it because I was waiting because I guess once you hit 300 subs, you can sync it up. And I was just like, I don't want one more thing I gotta manually upload shit to. So I was like, I was waiting until I hit 300. So.
Well, Jose, I'm what most people, even though I'm Gen X, most people consider me a boomer. That's what I hear all the time. So fuck them. But I have no idea who you are because I stay away from all of this stuff. Like it's weird. I get on YouTube. We've been on doing this for 3 years, but I don't get any on any of the social media. I don't watch much on YouTube. Like the only thing I go on YouTube for is to pull up a song every once in a while or whatever. But so if you would, could you enlighten myself and others as to who you are, where you come from, all of that fun jazz?
Yeah, I'm like we said, I'm Jose Galison. I'm about like 60 episodes deep in a podcast. Been doing it about 6 to 8 months ish. I'm terrible at time, so I'm not quite sure which. Probably like 7-ish. I generally kind of politic-ish. I like to switch up every now and then. Like recently, I just did an episode on health and fitness. And I've done episodes on comics, manga, all sorts of shit. Usually, I try to somehow tie it back to liberty type shit, but I mean, generally speaking, it's just kind of shit that I want to talk about generally. But generally, the stuff that interests me is usually somewhat related to liberty. I'm an anarchist, agorist more specifically, if that means anybody to your crowd. I listened to a couple of you guys' episodes to get a feel, so I'm not quite sure what you guys' crowd, your people or whatever tend to like, but that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know. I mean, just generally, I'm a little bit of a shit poster. I don't know. I mean, anyone knows Dave Smith and anyone knows Pete Quinones. I'm kind of like a bastard Walmart version of the two of them. So,
So, what prompted you to, get involved in this new media era, as it were? Was it more, like you said, more your personal things, or was it really all the stupidity that's going on in society these days?
It was definitely the latter. This was actually an outlet of this thing we started. Whenever shit got really weird, because I'm not gonna lie, I don't know how you guys were, but when the COVID started cracking down big time, I'm in Florida, so it's pretty chill now over here ish. Yeah. But whenever it first started cracking down, I was getting pretty freaked out. I started fucking hoarding ammo, fucking all that shit. I was ready for the boog to kick off. And so I was freaking out, and me and a few friends started this thing on Facebook, which was a network of groups, which we called the Liberty Movement. And it was, it's not as big as it was now. It's kind of lost a lot of its energy, but it still ended up kind of spawning off a lot of things. This initially started my podcast as an outlet from that. And then just over time, it just kind of, it became its own thing. And that's where I'm at now. So yeah, I don't know, just, it's kind of what it came out of. It was just an outlet to, I don't know, basically I'm kind of, a lot of times one of frequent topics is the way shit's going now, the way the future, the writing on the wall, Like, obviously, we were not future tellers, but we can kind of have a rough idea of where things are going. And so it's kind of like I'm kind of essentially trying to shepherd the sheep and be like, hey, act accordingly, like start doing shit. Because I mean, I know a lot of people. I don't know if you what circles you guys run in, but I know one of the frequent things lately is white pills, black pills. I've been a fan of Mencius Moldbug. He created it, and I've tried like popularizing it more. Is the clear pill, which is realism, and like that's kind of where I'm at, because I do think like there is some. I think the whole point of the clear pill is that like people get caught up in this like binary of like white or black, but it's like if you're in Cali and San Francisco, like you can be like, oh, the white pill, but it's like, yeah, but shit's probably gonna get really rough for you in the next decade or so. So like really you need to realize what's going on and start doing shit to move your life in the correct direction. So and that's kind of a lot of stuff I've been talking about. So yeah.
Well, I agree with that. It's a really good way of putting it. The clear pill, I like it.
Yeah, John's always John's likes to think of himself as a libertarian, and he's been attempting over these last.
I'm a recent convert to the anarchy side.
Well, because you were very much leaning to a minarchist kind of mindset.
I was a minarchist for a long time until January. I don't know what kind of events might have coincided with that, but that was a big part of it. Yeah. Just recent,
oh, I wonder. Let's see what could have happened in January that made some people shift.
Yeah.
Now you said and Jose, you said you're an anarchist, but more specifically, you said you're a
agorist. Which that's kind of like a, I don't know. It's just a label. It's a I don't know. Are either of you familiar with the term at all, or not really?
No, actually, this is my first time hearing it.
Oh,
actually.
Okay.
You're about to be one there, Robert. You're about to
good.
Be an agorist.
All right. Yeah. Are you an anarchist?
Myself, look, I'm 53 years old, and I'm a get off my fucking lawn-ist. That's pretty much what I am. Right
That's
now,
an anarchist.
right now, currently, my wife and I just bought 6.5 acres out in the fucking country. We're going to homestead it.
You're an anarchist.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I'm saying. He's doing it. He's being an agorist.
Right.
You know what it is.
Right. I mean, so, you know, if that's what my label is going to become, so be it. But it's more just, you know, I just want to be left alone and do my thing. Find a way to exempt myself from taxes on that property, which is pretty easy to fucking do, and be done. Everybody leave me the fuck alone.
Yeah, I always say agorist is I usually say it's like a more specific version of ANCAP, which I don't know if you know what ANCAP is, an anarcho-capitalist.
Right.
So like, but agorist is more specifically, it kind of is like prescribes tactics, and you're kind of already doing those tactics. Like a big concept in agorism is the markets, like black markets, gray markets, white markets. Black markets, shit that's like completely illegal. Gray markets is like that, like kind of gray area where it's like, I mean, that would be something as simple as growing. I guess maybe not growing your own food might not necessarily be perfect, but like, I don't know, say you're trying to homestead. Yeah, growing your own weed, selling. Say you have cows, selling milk to your neighbors. It's like technically speaking, you're probably supposed to fucking claim taxes on that shit, but it's like, who the fuck does that? No one does that. So it's like it's really a tactic of kind of like draining the state. Like, and it's honestly, it's more of like a mentality, because like if we just get everyone to have that mentality of like to not only be like I'm going to give the state as little as I possibly can without getting in trouble, but also be shameless about it. Like I feel like that's a good society, because a lot of people will do whether they will like say like they're a waitress and they won't like claim taxes in their tips, but they in the back of their head they kind of have this like nagging like, well, I'm supposed to. It's like, no, you aren't. Like, fuck them. Like, that's your goddamn money.
Right. You earned it by being fake nice to people that you don't care about. Like, you should keep that money. You earned that money.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of, I've lived in the city, as it were, for many years now, for well over 30 years plus now, and I'm just fucking tired of it. I grew up in the country. I grew up being self-sufficient, learned how to do all of that, and I'm like, that's what we need to get back to. I was just having a talk with my son, and I'm like, look, you're 15 years old. you need to come live with me for a year when we get out here and start doing this. Let me show you how to work the earth. Let me show you how to make for yourself and do for yourself, because this independence that everybody seems to have on somebody doing for them, whether it's through production, whether it's through capitalism, whether it's through legislation, is just fucking insane. It's just like, it doesn't have any long-term possibility, right? It's just not sustainable, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So now, I think John told me, what do you do for a living?
Oh, I'm a fucking Fed. I work for the government. I'm active duty military. I legit have like a couple more weeks before I go on terminal, because I've been in 11 years in the Air Force, and I'm getting out. So, you know, and part of that is to do with it. I always try to tell people, because I've been an ANCAP for a while, you know, or like, I mean, Agorist is more recently, but I'm going to kind of throw these terms around a little bit, but they're kind of interchangeable. ANCAP, Agorist, Libertarian. Like I'm kind of all of them. It just depends on how specific I'm being. But I try to be very clear that this isn't some like me being a hero, like Captain Save-A-Ho, like, oh, you know, like, oh, I'm not doing this because it's immoral. Because I do actually think, I mean, you can get in the weeds, but, you know, if you have anything to do with, like, the shit going on, I do think military service is immoral to some extent. Yeah. But depending on what you're doing, if you're that asshole fucking folding towels in the base gym, like, let's be real, like, you aren't really doing shit. If anything, you're just draining government money, so you're just a welfare whore. But
yeah.
So
you're just the guy who, you know, with the guy who's responsible for being an asshole. Like, you're just washing that dude's underwear. You know?
Yes, exactly. And it's like, it's also like, if you didn't exist, like, they would just go to a base gym elsewhere. So like, I don't know. I mean, if you're someone literally dropping bombs on people, and that's another story. You're directly responsible. You can't be like, oh, well, just queuing orders. Like, that didn't work for certain people in the World War II, so it's not going to work for you either. So like, it doesn't absolve you of moral responsibility.
That's true.
But no, my biggest reason, like I said, I've been anarchist for a while, so I've had this thought process for a while. I just kind of was like, I guess just selfish like that, and you know, I have bills to pay and shit. But I've kind of seen the writing on the wall, and I don't know when this is going to go to shit or how it's going to go to shit. But I don't think I want to in any way be dependent on the government, or reduce the amount that I'm dependent on the government to the furthest extent possible. Because I think if shit gets real, you do not want to be on the dole, whether that means you're some welfare whore, whether that means you have a government job. I think, like, don't get me wrong, I think if, like, say we have a collapse, I think the people with government jobs will probably do better than people that are, like, on welfare or whatever. But you're still not going to do as good as someone like Robert here, who's homesteaded out in the country and, you know, just straight chilling. Like, he's going to be fucking killing it when that pops off, you know? So, like, that's kind of the way I see things. Like, I do not want to be dependent on the government in any way, or to the least amount possible. So, because I think things are going to get real in the next, like, and even if they don't get real in the next, like, decade or so, I also, like, I want to set things up for the future, because I think within my lifetime or my children's lifetime they will be. So, yeah.
Yeah, see, that's...
I mean, how symbolically cool would it be to pass on your ammunition to your progeny? You know what I mean? Like, you didn't have to use it, so that's one symbolism. You didn't have to use it. And then two, you know what I mean? They inherit the means to defend themselves from you.
In a weird way, it'd be almost cooler too if they do make it all illegal, and you're like, here you go.
Yeah, that's even better. Even better, yeah.
In a certain fucked up kind of way.
Yeah.
Well, you know, one of the thing about, you know, the liberty movement, libertarianism. I'll say libertarianism because, you know, that's always been the thing between John and I, and even going into anarchism, and I won't say agorism, you know, just mainly anarchism. My biggest problem with that, you know, finding some way for that to function in present day society, I keep running into a brick wall. And that is, you know, a combination of advanced technology, you know, this digital age we're at, and population, especially population densities. Like, it almost seems impossible for something like that to function in this country based off those two things. Because now it's, you know, it's almost as if all of the hurt feelings that we have on social media, right? The outcry, oh, somebody said something mean to me, you've got to stop that. now it's filtering into present day life where it's starting to be legislated on, right? And
Yeah.
I don't know how those things could combine and actually be beneficial for people. Like, can we get to a point of real liberty in this digital age and with the amount of people that we have in this country?
I think yes and no. One thing I've been saying a lot is going forward, I think we're going to see a big divide. I think we're going to see, and we're kind of seeing it between the red, the blue, the rural, the urban. Like, I think we're going to see this big divide. And I think the like, especially the blue urban areas are going to start getting more authoritarian. And I think the rural, you know, a lot of times red, not perfectly along these divides, but somewhat roughly. I think as time goes on, we're going to see like them become like the rural areas becoming more free, and then the urban areas becoming less free. And it's going to be like this divide. And whether we get secession or whatever out of that, I don't know. I think I've been saying a lot that I'm if I had to guess, it'd be something like a soft secession, soft nullification, where it's like you have these crazy authoritarian shit in certain areas. But in other areas, it's like, yeah, they're still part of this giant apparatus that's a state, but it's kind of like, but we're not really doing that kind of deal. Like that's kind of what I see. I might be wrong. But yeah, I mean, I do think it's definitely possible, but at the same time, I kind of get what you're getting at, the idea that, you know, could we even function without a state? And I think I like to compare like statism to racism, in a sense, because what you got to realize what statism is. All it is the myth of authority. At its very root, it's if you bring it down to a very root, like what statism is, like it's the belief that someone else has the right to rule you, and then on the inverse, the people that believe they have the right to rule people. So, like, it's that simple. That's what it gets down to. And there's always going to be people that have that. I mean, whether that's just some fucking tribe out in the woods that with some, even if it's some commune and they have some leader that they somehow allow them, like, he gets to coerce upon them for some fucking reason. But I do think it's one of those things that's, like, never going to go away. I think it may be lessened. But and then also on the other hand, I think what you're getting at too a little bit was like if it's even feasible, which I don't know. We may never see anarchism in my life. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't. I mean, I think we might see things close to it ish. I think it's like kind of almost like a spectrum type deal. Well, so that's kind of how I see it. All right.
I think also that I don't think you can see anarchism on a large scale, because anarchism is kind of an individual thing. It's, you know, it's two individuals, you know, voluntarily associating with each other. You know, that in itself is anarchism, right? Yeah. So you can't if it was explained not to me directly, but I'm sure you're familiar with Ace, right? Ace.
Oh yeah.
So he had a very good analogy for this, which is like scale is just an aggregate of smaller scales. So, like, the large scale is just an aggregate of smaller groups. So it's all these individual small groups make up, you know, the large scale, of course. Right. So just those groups interacting with each other without the rest of the groups that's anarchy right there. That's exactly what that is. And that makes a lot of sense to me, at least.
Right. Yeah. But I always run into, you know, much like Jose was saying, it's like even when you bring it down to the smaller scale, in a more anarchist society, there is still going to be the idea of the state in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's a local, we'll say you can use overlord, mayor, you know, group leader, somebody who's in charge. There's always going to be the idea of a state, and then
the managers at Buffalo Wild Wings, right? You know, there's still going to be somebody above you. And
as soon as you have that, you've created a power structure. And then what do we know about power? Power always corrupts, and then you're going to lead into corruption, and so it brings me back in this circle where I'm like, well, you know, when you have larger populations, the state gets stronger, right? The state takes more power because you have to have more control over that population, and the only real solution is the country breaks down. Like we could not be the America we are today in an anarchist type society or a libertarian society. You've got to break it apart. It can't be this great nation that it is. It would be smaller nation states. It's the only way it would work. in my opinion.
Well, that's kind of the beauty of like what I was talking about agorism earlier, and kind of in a sense, a little bit like what you're doing is to some extent you are in a way living anarchy. I mean, obviously you're going to interact with the state on some level, but you're reducing the amount that you will interact with the state to a certain degree. And there are ways to continue to increase that, and the more people you can get to do that, more people who you get to start moving their life that way, the easier it makes for other people to move their life that way. And also another big part about agorism is it advocates not using the state at all. Like, so it actually advocates not voting. It's because theoretically, if everyone just stopped voting, the state would wither away. So like, which obviously that's just a thought experiment. Like, we wouldn't be able to get people to do that. But what happens when you're at 90%, 80%, 70%, 60%? At some point, it's like, yeah, you may not have anarchy, but if you have like 10% or only 10% of the people in the nation are voting, there is something to where the elected leader is going to be like, yeah, like 90% of the people, for one reason or another, dude, aren't involved. So I need to walk a tight line here. It may not be anarchy per se. You know what I mean? That's why I'm like, I know a lot of people get caught up. Anarchy is just kind of like a mindset, or even like John was getting at, a relationship. Like, I like to use the example of like a mob. Like, if you live in if you live in a town that's controlled by the mafia, like, in principle, it's no different than the state.
Right.
Like, it just isn't. But the big difference is if you're in that town with the mafia, people don't have this illusion that these people have a right to rule them. They just understand that it's just they are ruling by just straight up fucking violence.
Well, every 4 years you get to pick the new Don, so.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not that bad, really, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, but at least the difference there is it's kind of like a mindset. Because if you can get people to like at least realize that, like, because like I feel like it's way more pervasive, the state, than like a mafia. They've actually shown that in a lot of places. I mean, I'm getting a little weeds here and talking about my ass, but that mafias in a lot of places, people thought they were better. They actually performed better than the state. They cleaned up, dealt with crime. They had less collateral damage than the fucking state did. Like,
they held to their word too. Like, you bought protection from them, they protected you.
And I think part of that is because they didn't have this illusion that they had a right to rule them. They knew, even on their side, that it came from just straight up violence. So like that's I think that matters. Like, even if it's as simple as like, we know this, even if we accept that the state will always exist, if we can at least get like a country or a critical mass is like they don't have the right to do this, they may still keep doing it to some extent, but at least I feel like it changes the dynamic in a big way. So, yeah.
Well, I can understand that, but my thought is, I want us to become isolationist, right? I mean, I think if we became a more isolationist country, then what the people have to say in this country starts to change, because if we just told our people we don't give a fuck what's going on elsewhere, we don't care.
Cliché philosophy,
right? It doesn't matter, how racist these other countries are, or how they treat women, or how they treat their people. That's on them. If those people want to stand up and fight and do something about it, that's on them. We stay the fuck out of it. Now let's just focus on us. Let's focus on our problems. And then those problems aren't really as fucking negatively impacting as people want to make it out to be. And then the 1% that is so vocal now it won't be as loud, because people are like, you know what? We've got ourselves to take care of. Why don't you shut the fuck up and let's worry about doing us?
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, these aren't mutually exclusive ideas. If anything, I actually think like anarchists like me and John drive it that way, because like, yes, we may never see our state. If anything, like increasing the amount of anarchists within this fucking country, if anything, I mean, it depends on the type of anarchist you're talking about. There's different types, but generally speaking, me and John's flavor of anarchist, the more anarchists you have within this nation, the closer you get to that. Because once they realize that they have a populace that doesn't recognize, or a decent amount that doesn't recognize their legitimacy, it's going to stop them from doing shit like that. They're going to think twice before they fucking or even on with you, Robert, with you, like, kind of, you're going to be homesteading. You're not going to be giving them as much taxes. They're going to have less they can take from you, to where it's like they may get to a point where if we get more people who do shit like that, like, you get to a point where it's like, we can't afford these fucking forever wars. Like, they can only print so much money until they're going to just, you know what I mean? Like, I know that it's like the printer go burr, but at some point they're going to fuck themselves, and they want to keep this gravy train going, so.
Yeah, I mean, even Democrats recognize the harm of inflation, just not, they don't care, I guess, as much about it. But even they recognize, that's why they negotiated for the $1,400 stimulus check instead of the $2,000 one. You know what I mean? Like, they said, oh yeah, you already got the $600 one, but really they were just like, yeah, we don't want to print quite that much money, so let's kind of.
Well, look,
back off on that a little bit.
I understand that, like, the welfare system is broken and it should be taken, it should be dropped, but I don't have that. I wouldn't have as much problem with giving people in this country money if I knew that there weren't billions upon billions of dollars being handed out around the world to other countries. And here's an example. All this shit that's been going on in Israel and Gaza, right, over the last couple of weeks. Graham just came out and said that Israel is about to ask us for $1 billion to restock the missiles they were using for their Iron Dome defense. They want us to foot the bill to restock their missile supply. And I'm like, why in the fuck would we even bother doing that? Right? But that's $1 billion that can go to Americans, that can go to something here in America, help bring production back to America, to help drive costs down of American goods. That $1 billion could be used so much better here. Mm-hmm. And that's just
or just stop taking out of our check. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Right? I mean, the tax burden could be lessened on Americans if we had all those billions that we're spending around the world, no matter whether it's on these wars or whether it's in aid. Why the fuck do we care?
Yeah.
Oh, I agree. I mean, but like, once again, like I think having an anarchist mentality, if anything, drives it that way. Which is like, this like anarchist divide. I think it's just a mentality thing. And as long as you aren't like, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're anarchists are very much like a burn it down type thing. And like, I mean, I'm not like necessarily. I'm not like actively go burn it down. If the state does it to itself, fuck yeah, I'm all about it. But like, I mean, I'm not like a boogaloo type. I mean, I joke about it, but I like if I mean, it depends on you define it. Like, if you're saying collectivized defense, like not even offense, like, then sure, okay, whatever. I'm all for people grouping together and protecting themselves against the state. But like, I don't think we should like do some 1776 type shit. Like, when I say anarchist, that's not what I mean. Right. If anything, like, I don't know if you've heard Le Boetti, like he was a writer, and his quote was like, I don't ask that you put hands upon the, I'm going to fuck it up. It's like, I don't ask that you put hands upon the tyrant. I just ask that you walk away, and like, in like a behemoth or like a Titan or Goliath, he will fall of his own weight. And so like, that's kind of like, if anything, it's just walk away, stop recognizing it. And I mean, it just will, and like, yeah, I won't, like, we're probably never going to get like this magical critical mass or where everyone has this belief, but really, if anything, like, that's kind of the best way to get a minarchist society too. Like, ideally, you know what I mean? Like, we're kind of moving the same way. Like, so they're not like mutually exclusive in a sense, I mean, it's just the only difference is I would be like, well, let's go a little farther, but we're not even close to there. So who gives a fuck?
Right. Well, and you bring up the electric boogaloo, and the biggest problem I've had with that is, like, I don't have a problem with revolt against tyrants, right? I don't have an issue with that, because that is something this country was founded on, right? To stand up to tyranny and stand on your own 2 feet. However, over the last 30, 40 years, I've watched as two parties have pitted Americans against one another, to where any kind of revolt is going to be American against American. In our yards, in our streets, not taking it to the tyrants, because they pitted us against each other for so long.
So this is about to get dangerously close to getting us shut down, but that was kind of why the incident that happened in January was so shocking to especially the elites, especially the people who run the country. That's why it was so shocking, because they actually hit the right target for once. It hasn't happened before, not in a long time. And so they finally hit the right target.
Well,
and they shit themselves a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I mean, I have to say, to me, that was it wound up seeming to me like more of a selfie opportunity, right? That was the thing that pissed me off the most. It was just like, woo, oh, I got a selfie in this office and I did this and that, and I'm like, no. That's not what something like this is supposed to be about, right?
Right. Well, it wasn't though. It wasn't like it was planned. It was
Right.
just like that's what it's being talked about. And that's why, like I said, they shit themselves. That's why these, you saw how many National Guard were in D.C. for how long? Like I think they're just now pulling the rest of them
this
out.
past week they gave the pullout orders. Yeah.
I know. I think the powers that be love January 6th, to be honest.
Oh, I think they did
do
too.
now. I'm just saying, not during.
I don't know. Even during,
the
I mean, I'm not going to go so far as be conspiracy minded and be like they let it happen. But it's kind of one of those things where, like, it really wouldn't be that unbelievable if they did, because it's like, it's kind of a perfect thing for them. They kind of were able to easily shuffle their fucking troubled child out of there. And he got him shut the fuck up. And, Trumpy, and yeah, I mean, and it kind of gave them a legitimate reason to be able to stamp down. They are already like kind of sort of. I mean, I'm talking my ass. I'm pretty sure they tried to do like a whole bunch of other bills that were very authoritarian after.
Oh yeah.
Like it gave them so many reasons to push shit that they want to do.
That's a good point. Now they're also able to put that on certain Republicans. Being able to tie them to that and saying, oh, this person is just like this, and then that person may or may not get replaced, might not get elected again.
Yeah.
Come, next year.
Yeah, it's I mean, I don't know. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, when I saw that happening, a part of me was like, "This is fucking awesome." Like, this is like, this is super fucking dope. But like, on the other hand, I knew like this is not gonna be good. It's kind of like for me being an anarchist. It's like when I see. Like I always make I use this example when I talk about January 6th a lot. There was some dude who, I don't know the specifics. I do really need to figure out the specifics because I use this example a lot. But there's this guy who got pulled over by cops. He wasn't doing anything wrong. I think you come to find out later he had some like drugs on him or something, and like he didn't want to go to jail. But the cops like kept being like, get out of the car, get out of the car, get out of the car, and they were like, they tased him multiple times. He didn't do anything wrong. For me as an anarchist, this guy did nothing wrong morally. Nothing wrong. The cops, in my opinion, have no moral authority over anyone to be like, you need to fucking get out. And they assaulted him multiple times, and then they ended up yanking him out of the car. And then, like, I think it was like a third or fourth time of being like assaulted by the cops. He pulled out his gun and blew them both away. I think that was retarded. But morally, I actually think it was in the right. And that's kind of the same idea with like the January 6th thing, where it's like, like with the January 6th thing, it's kind of like, I think in a sense they were morally correct. I just think tactically that was retarded. Like
short-sighted.
So it's like, because like that guy that shot the cops.
Do a revolt?
And I'm actually not a big fan of revolt. I think it almost never ends well. It just puts another person in power. I know we're really romantic about 1776, but I'm no history buff. But if you really think about it deeply, like, I mean, it wasn't really that bad, and it didn't take that long for it to go to shit after that. So
I was going to say, you know how long it took before the boot was brought down on the neck of the American people?
Yeah. It was immediately the Whiskey Rebellion.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much right away.
That's an excellent example because it always brings to mind, and I know it was Mel Gibson said it in The Patriot, but it was that thought from back in the day. Why should I trade a tyrant 3,000 miles away for a tyrant 3 miles away, right? Why?
Excellent analogy. I love that. Yeah.
Why do how is this going to serve my family? How's it going to serve my purpose, my life, and their life moving forward?
Gibson's character was definitely an anarchist.
Right.
For sure.
That movie is really based.
Yeah.
But
terribly historically inaccurate. But
that thing that happened in January. I'm not even going to speculate or hypothesize as to who would be considered behind that or allowed that. However, both sides took away from that the opportunity to create a stronger state.
Snap.
Right? I mean,
Real quick.
it was a way for everybody got an avenue to build a stronger state foundation with more authority and more power. And it's been evident in how they've approached going after the people and what they've done with legislation. I mean, there's, you can go on whitehouse.gov and it's surprising to see little bits of legislation that are going on the floor, this, that, and the other thing that nobody's talking about. No, nothing. And it's like, well, but they're about to do this and they're about to do that. Even the shit that they're wrapping into these COVID packages. Like, they're sneaking shit in there that is just very statist, very controlling, and it's like, but we gave them they got that option. What?
Real quick, I wouldn't interrupt you if it wasn't important.
Is it important?
Quest Fanning has donated $15 to us,
Sweet.
bringing us 40% of the way to our goal, where we'll have a drunk gaming stream. So yeah, if you guys want to see that, want to take part in that, the link down below, buymeacoffee.com. You guys can donate there, and once we reach our goal, like I said, we'll be doing a drunk gaming stream with everyone who supported. So
You're welcome. It was my sex appeal.
yeah, there you go.
I would donate, but I've seen John drunk gaming in person, and it never ends well.
It always ends fantastically.
For you, it's called passing out, right?
Right, the person who matters.
Okay, so now, from the standpoint of, okay, I talked about population, Jose. We've got 300, working on 350 million people in this country, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get them to spread out? How do you get them to stop this mentality that we have to be clumped together, like, to really push an agrist situation? People got to get the fuck away from everybody else, right? They got to start moving out. They got to find places where they can have land, try and do self-sufficiency, whatever the case may be. I mean, how do you incentivize people to do that? Because everything is about incentive now, right? Everything has to be incentivized for most of these younger generations. How do you convince them that hard work and self-sufficiency is more important than sitting in an apartment building downtown getting checks from the government?
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. Incentives. I don't think you do. I think the incentives will do it naturally on its own. I can screech and go on my podcast all the time, and I think there's something to that. You're identifying the remnant. There are people this message will identify with. There are also people that it will not. And like, if anything, I'm actually a big fan of divisiveness right now. Like, I want to take people that have a belief similar to mine and cement them further in it, and I want to take the people who don't and cement them further in there. So that way we can start going to our own separate little areas, and we can start driving that way. Like, and I think there will be you brought up incentives. I think the incentive will be liberty. Like, so the people who liberty is an incentive for them will start making the moves that will get them closer to liberty, whether that be move to the country or become less dependent on the government or just a multitude of things. And then the people who have the opposite incentives, who don't, that's not their value system, they will go the other way. And that's kind of why I think we will have pockets of freedom and we'll have pockets of fucking authoritarianism. So,
but now the capitalism comes into play in all of this in such a hardcore way that, capitalism is in more control of our lives, in my opinion, in a lot of ways, than the government is. Right?
I mean, it depends on what definition of capitalism you're using, though.
Well,
I think.
Well,
there's a few different ways that capitalism is used.
Well, if
I get what you're getting at, I can answer this though. I know what you're getting at.
Right, because if you're not self-sufficient, you rely on capitalism in all its varied forms, right? For everything that you need and everything that you want, and a glaring example of how capitalism, even from the standpoint of workforce, has been made evident after all of this COVID money, all of the unemployment benefits, where people are, we've talked about this before, where people are getting a taste of what it's like to make a real wage by not doing fuck, right? I don't have to work, and I'm getting a shit more money than I was making in my job. Capitalists control us in so many ways. That is my biggest concern, is that they are eventually going to be the power versus the government.
Yeah, I get what you're getting at, and that's kind of why agorism, I think, was such a thing that resonated with me this past year or two, and that why I've recently kind of made that change. Because one emphasis of agorism is that, and agorism actually doesn't tend to like the word capitalism, because capitalism does have a lot of connotations, but you have to understand what we're living under is not what an ANCAP would consider capitalism. I'm sure you know this. It's, you can call it crony capitalism, you can call it corporatism, or you can call it fascism. It was Mussolini himself who said that, fascism could more accurately be called corporatism because it's the merger of the public and the state. And it seems cool when you have Amazon, you're like, this is fucking dope. This comes here in a day or whatever, or because the lot of this too is that the state has regulated all these businesses, and they have created these large, huge businesses that have kind of taken over their markets. But what you're doing is you're centralizing, and that's only going to work. So it seems nice for a while until it's not. And then when it's not, it goes to shit, because this is actually not a very good, it seems good in the short term, but we've kind of seen this past year that there were some issues with supply lines and stuff. And so the more that the state starts centralizing things under their system of fascism, because that's the thing is fascism is this idea that the government can kind of control the fucking the economy, through corporations, and somehow they can fucking be a magic little puppet master. And it seems great because you're kind of build up these big businesses and make them bigger, but then there becomes issues when you further centralize, especially with supply lines and stuff. And it's these unseen things that you don't notice until it's an issue. And once it's an issue, it's an issue. It's because you put all your eggs in one basket. And now once Amazon's fucking up, or, look at bacon. Bacon is still expensive as fuck right now.
Yes, it is. And I love bacon.
Yeah.
That's why I'm buying pigs.
Yeah, and so that is
hell yeah.
And that is a good argument for why this is actually not a good form, whether you want to call it free markets or capitalism or whatever. It's not advantageous. It's going to go to shit eventually. And so it's once you start seeing past this stuff, you can start being oh, okay. And you can start thinking for the future. Because I do think, we are becoming more and more of a fascist country. And I don't mean in the gay, lefty way when people say fascism, and they just mean that which they don't like. I mean, right. Yeah, I mean corporatism, fucking literally a hierarchy of fucking corporations that fucking serve the state. And that's what we have
state,
now.
Nothing outside the state, nothing against the state, all those Mussolini things. Yeah.
Because right now, there's so many different kickbacks that all these major corporations get. The big thing recently, with the fucking Elon Musk thing, a lot of people surmise that hey, the guy, because he's so indebted to the government in a lot of ways. He gets a lot of kickbacks, a lot of shit from them, a lot of corporate welfare. And all they gotta do is, I don't know, maybe they do on the DL. I don't know. The feds that are spooky people, they could be yo, we're gonna fucking pull away this benefit if you don't do what we say. And they're okay, all right, whoa. It's that simple. So
it happens all the time. If you want evidence of an organization doing that, the EU does it all the time to their member states. They have all this money that they collect from the member states, and then they distribute it based on need and want, but mostly need. But then if a country is not exactly siding with them or taking their then they'll be well, we're not going to give you as much this time. Yeah. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Okay, here's the rest of it now that you're complying. Right, completely unrelated, but they do it all. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
So we know that it happens. Just maybe not. I don't know if it happens with our country, but I wouldn't doubt it.
And fascism's so pernicious, though, because it just lulls you into this idea of that, things are so dope because you see all this, giant corporatism, and we see Amazon, we see Google, and you're oh, this is fucking dope. But it's what you don't realize is they are they are centralizing like a motherfucker. So it's like you just need one little thing, one supply chain hiccup, one whatever, and it's like you're fucked. Like, I mean, yeah.
One warehouse to unionize, perhaps.
Right.
Yeah.
That could be a big problem for Amazon.
If it happens, it could be, except they'll just be like, oh, okay, well, you're all fired. We've got robots that can do your job. I mean, Amazon's not far off from just fucking getting rid of most of their workforce. They really aren't. But the thing about it is like you were talking about, government, expecting corporations to toe the line. But there's the other side of that where corporatism is in control of what's happening in the government as well. I mean, there's as much money being lobbied into the government by big corporations to manipulate legislation to where even if it's bad legislation that's not great for them, they get it tweaked to where it's not so bad, right? If they just lobby with enough money, with enough corporate pressure, etc. To where I still struggle to figure out who actually is in charge. And 20 years from now, who will actually be in charge? Where they'll just come from behind the shadows and say, you know what? We've been pulling the strings long enough. You need to do what we say. Right.
I mean, it's both, obviously. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe one magically controls the other, but obviously it's both because neither of them is a monolith. The state's not a monolith. The businesses aren't a monolith, but it definitely goes both ways. They definitely, like it goes back and forth. You have the different lobbies, and even then, they're basically almost to some extent one and the same because like you have the interchange between, like, say, for example, with the war state, you have the generals who get out and go work at Raytheon, or you look at the feds who go then fucking, like, was it Clapper works at fucking CNN or whatever the fuck, like, or MSNBC. So it's just this circle jerk that it goes back and forth. I mean, at the end of the day, like, obviously the government is the fucking control structure with which they use. So, like, and if the government magically disappeared and it was just corporations, like, honestly, the corporation, and that's one big thing about agorism is the theory that, like, corporations actually aren't efficient. So if we, like, say we actually had anarchy, like, the corporations basically wouldn't be a thing because, like, it just is unwieldy. Because if you really think about a corporation, you really think about how inefficient they are, like, because they have to follow so many regulations and stuff. Like, it just most likely, I mean, I'm just theorizing because who knows? But even if somehow corporations did exist in a free country, like with no government, it still would be like, if anything, like they wouldn't be able to coerce you. Like, they're like, at the end of the day, they're like, here's this product. Do you want to buy it? And if you're like, no, you're like, okay. Like, it's that simple. Like, it's the state that gives them the apparatus of control.
Right.
So.
Well, I've long held this, this idea that, and it really sank in. There was a show on Sci-Fi called Continuum that was based on this idea that, there are key parts of the government that if corporations actually took them over, and it's education, military, and taxes, which corporations could easily, privatize those things. If they could get them out of the hold of the government. But if they had access to those three things, they would become the new state. Mm-hmm. Because those three key things are, those are the behemoth in my mind that the government just really, spends too much money on and has too much control over. Education is, I hate that the government has any fucking say in education. At all. Yeah. Even down to the local level, I'm like, you know what? Forcing kids to go to school in a specific way and standardizing education and then brainwashing them through college. It's you got to get fucking government out of schools, but privatizing it puts power into the hands of those who conglomerate, that suck it all up and try and do it.
I don't know. I mean, with education, if you privatize education, it would just, I don't know. I have a hard time believing that would be some, like, mega global corp that would fucking rule shit or anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
here there would be a chain of schools, like like we have chain restaurants, and so there would be like chains of schools.
Right.
But I think that, hang on, because I think the big difference between government school and private schools is that private schools have a customer, whereas state schools have products. That's the difference. State schools are making products, whereas the privatized schools are serving a customer.
I mean, they both have the customers. Just who is the customer?
Well, that's true too. But okay, well, so who are you though as the student, right?
Yeah.
In the state schools, you are the product. In a private school, you are the customer, or your parents are, you know. So that's kind of my point, though. So what I mean is, a private school will be held way more accountable by the customers than a state-funded school where you have no recourse. I mean, what do? Join the PTA, and then you become one of those Karen moms, in the gym screaming at the, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have any. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah,
Right.
if some magical Globo school corp fucking took it over, it would be like, okay, they did that somehow magically by cornering the market by being, awesome at what they're doing. So,
Well,
so it's like whatever. I mean, I don't think that would work out that way. Monopolies are kind of one of those things that they, people always say we need them, need the states, otherwise there'd be monopolies. But it's like, I actually am not a big fan of the concept of monopolies existing without a state, because there would always be somebody who would undercut, whether it be by price or provide a better product and like a superior product that maybe you could pay more for. There's always going to be different choices. So,
right.
Well, see, I always point to the largest monopoly that's ever existed, the British East India Company. That was the biggest monopoly that's ever existed, and it was just an arm of the crown for the British Empire. That's all it was. So it was a private company technically, but it was heavily funded, and I guess they had all kinds of deals and stuff. Basically, the India's company's job was to make the crown rich.
It's a private company, bro.
Very, very well. Yeah. But it's a private company
Yeah.
at the same time, though. But their whole business model is make the crown rich. Like, that was what their whole thing was. And they became the largest monopoly that has ever been.
Yeah, and that's kind of the shitty thing about corporations or the existence of a state, is because a lot of people have this like divide of like private and public, but it's like, it's not that simple. Like, Amazon is a fucking wing of the state. You can say they're a private company, but they are so fucking indebted, or basically in some senses almost one and the same with a state, that they basically are the state. So it's like, if you're getting any sort of kickback to the government, I mean, obviously it's a spectrum. Like, it's not like zeros and ones. Like, I mean, the Amazon isn't entirely the state, but they are so indebted to the state where they are definitely a tool of the state for goddamn sure. But like your fucking little bodega down the street, no, I mean they're not. I mean, like,
but look at the behemoth.
Oh, and I actually have real quick. The chat is adding something on to what I was saying. The East Seawall says the East India Trading Company also had a royal mandate, which prevented any competition, which is probably a much more important thing. Well, like I said, their whole job was make the crown rich.
Yeah, which is that comes
the
along.
Crown can't have competition. Right?
Yeah, that's a big thing with the state too. That's the whole thing with regulations, is they cut out competition. So that's how you get these gigantic corporations.
Well, they have these regulations. OSHA is the worst at this. They have so many regulations that it creates a barrier to entry for these industries.
Right.
Like, I mean, I was in a job recently that dealt heavily with OSHA and their regulations. There was another place that opened up in the same building that we were in, and they were doing well. They were just brand new, and then boom, these regulations hit. They had to spend upwards of $150,000 to be made up to OSHA regulations or the code. And of course, we were around for long enough that we could stomach that cost. But this guy was brand new; he couldn't do it, and 6 months into being his own business, had to shut down. Just because he couldn't afford the cost to be brought up to code, which was he just in the wrong place at the wrong time. He started it right as the code's becoming law. And
the difference with that, with like an OSHA violation, is that's backed up by force. Whereas if you just have some corporation that's selling a product and you don't want that product, they don't get to put a gun to your head and go, buy the motherfucking product.
Exactly.
Okay, so, I'll use Amazon as an example because literally Amazon is becoming a behemoth. I mean, they're buying up their all their own creating all their own avenues for shipping and global trade, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, they are becoming huge, and they're making themselves even bigger, and they're getting into every different type. Like right now, Bezos is like, "Oh, I support marijuana legislation, and I'm not going to drug test for marijuana and for most of my employees anymore." Of course, why not? Because what does Bezos want to sell on Amazon? He wants to sell fucking weed on Amazon. I'm not even in doubt about that, right? So the question is, like, a company with Amazon, as it grows and as it gets bigger, and as they're able to shut down these antitrust issues with them becoming a monopoly, because they just offer an umbrella for third-party sellers. They're not stopping the small business guy. He can come sell on Amazon and do great. What stops Amazon from becoming too big to fail, to where the power balance shifts and the state doesn't have power over them anymore? Much like we saw with HSBC Bank a few years back, when they didn't prosecute dirty tactics, illegal tactics, and they said, no, we can only give them a slap on the wrist because it will break the economy. They're too big to fail.
Well, that's kind of what I was getting at, where they're almost in some sense not a different entity from the government. They are, I mean, like I said, it's a spectrum, but that's why Amazon is so, like, that's what me and John were getting at, that the Amazon would not be what it was or is without the state. If there was no state, Amazon would, I mean, maybe they'd still be out there providing quality products, but there's no way they would be what they are now, because there's so many regulations, so many people kept out of the market that has allowed them to pave a path to be what they are. And like, so yeah, I guess you're kind of getting at that, like, well, they could be too big to, they are too big to fail. They're already too big to fail. Now, but that's a function of the state, like the state existing. And if the state magically, if we like able to snap our fingers all Thanos style and make the state no longer exist, like they have no apparatus of fucking like coercion or a monopoly on violence to be able to make them be able to continue doing what they're doing. I mean, they'd probably still do well, but I mean, they'd probably start dwindling because they wouldn't have the same protections that are afforded to them by the government. So,
I mean,
Amazon was not talking to the government when they were shipping books to people.
Right.
You know what I mean? When they were just a bookstore.
Right.
Like,
And
you know what I mean? Like, it's only because they grew and gained more influence.
So it begs the question, or it brings the question to my head: how are they not on the path to a corporatocracy? I mean,
they are.
Well, I mean, and that's what I talk about when I talk about corporatocracy taking over versus the state we have. I mean, 10 years from now, Amazon may be selling education. Amazon may be selling military.
Jose's whole point here is that, like, they're not that different. That the corporations are the state and the states are the corporations.
But at some point, the state becomes irrelevant to them. Is what my concern is, and that is the bigger problem.
If the state ever becomes irrelevant to them, it's because they are the state, which at that point it's kind of just. It's redundant, so it's almost like a non-point. You know what I mean? Like they're essentially just a different state. Which, I mean, I honestly think they're kind of already there already. That's where we're at now. Like we have the corporations that are like. I mean, obviously it's getting more. It's furthering as time goes on, but that's kind of where we're at now. I mean, it's not as evident because we haven't had as many huge issues, or it hasn't been as crazy. We haven't devolved into like. I don't know, some of the crazier aspects of fascism, but I think we're on our way. So, the further we centralize into these things, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't disagree with you. I feel like we're kind of saying the same things in a lot of ways. That's kind of where we're at already. So
there's too much societal reliance on Amazon. That reliance is building up, and that is that is going to be that stronger avenue for them to do this, and there's
everything I've got for the podcast is like the camera, the microphone, these headphones. They're all Amazon.
Right.
They're all Amazon.
And it's that kind of reliance that will make our society more beholden to Amazon, and on a global scale too. I mean, these corporations control our economy now, right? This past year and a half is evident as to what inflation will do. Like, they're going to be responsible for a collapse if there's an economic collapse. I understand the government's printing money. I get that. But one hand washes the other. It's, these companies are taking it as an opportunity to jack prices up sky high, and there's nobody stopping it. And but to stop it would be wrong, right? It's too much state. No, you can't regulate, right? You don't want to regulate the market and tell these corporations, no, you can't jack up prices just because people have more money. They'll always have an excuse. Oh, we don't have enough employees, or there were lockdowns, or fuel prices went up, but the prices never come back down.
If we stop the regulation, though, then that allows for competition, which naturally drives the prices down.
Okay.
That's the point, is doing it organically as opposed to forcing prices down. Now you've pissed off the corporation that funds your next election. You know what I mean? Like, they really can't do that.
However, this past year and a half, all this COVID shit has played right into their hands because, as I said, where are these small businesses going to get the money to pay these employees who are saying, oh, wait, you don't pay enough money for me to work for you? There are businesses that need employees, and if they can't afford to pay them, then they can't become competitive. And that has played perfectly into Amazon, Walmart, all these companies, that can afford to do it, right? Yeah. Amazon's laughing. It's like, oh, we can pay people $15 an hour.
Yeah.
No problem.
You said something there, though, which I know it was just an analogy, but it kind of, I feel like it's a good way to illustrate what me and John are getting at. You said one hand washes the other. Yeah, exactly, because they're part of the same beast. So, like, and so to be like the idea that, well, what are we going to, like, we need them to, the government to, I don't know, stop hooking up Amazon. But it's like, that's like asking me to cut off my left hand. Like, it's like, sure, you can wish in one hand and shit in the other and see which fills up quicker. But, like, I mean, asking the government to not help out corporations that is essentially in bed with, or, I mean, really, right. I guess with the in bed analogy, you could basically say it's jerking off because it's the same fucking thing. So, like, they're one and the same for the most part. I mean, it's not entirely accurate to say they're one and the same because it's like Amazon is probably like 90% like basically government, whereas the government is 100% government or whatever. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, it is a little bit of a spectrum, but at the same time, it's like the government's interests are in Amazon and Amazon's interests are in the government. And to some extent, they are the same thing. I mean, at the root, though, it's the coercion that's the issue. Like, that is what has allowed them to get where they're at. And that's kind of what we need to get rid of. That's kind of what's like in it with agorism. It's like, it's essentially advocating the dissolution of a state. And it's also advocating being, more legit fucking capitalism. Like, not this fucking centralized bullshit that's eventually going to go to hell.
Right. Because
that is part of why things are going bad. It's a lot of people don't see it because it just seems nice now, but it's going to cause problems in the future. And if you can start being more of an entrepreneur, like, especially there are, on one hand, there's also a lot of openings now. There's a lot more opportunities in a lot of ways. So, like, the gig economy, shit like that, there's probably gonna be options for entrepreneurialism. I mean, it's not gonna be super easy, but I mean, to some extent, you got to get your hands dirty and start doing that shit to provide for the future. So, because eventually this shit's going to go bad. Eventually, like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, it'd be hard to have a little business or be an entrepreneur or do this or that. And it will be. But this thing, what we have right now is going to go to shit eventually. This whole system of control through corporations and shit, all this centralization is going to fail eventually. And it's going to be the people who have, got their hands dirty and done like what you're doing, Robert, and having like, homesteading and shit like this that are going to thrive when this shit starts going bad. Like when inflation hits, shit like that.
I have this dystopian idea of this ironic situation that when shit does hit the fan and everything begins to collapse, corporations are going to bail out the government and take a little more power, take a little bit stronger hold on the state, and be like, oh, well, we've been making billions. Here, we can help you out. Just Give us a little more control.
God damn it, Robert! That just made my dick soft. How dare you?
I just think that I don't think they'd be able to be honest. Like if you look at how much money the government spends from using printing money and shit like that, the idea that the corporations will bail them out is, I feel like, actually a little bit unrealistic. But I guess I get what you're getting at.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, it's not like anybody, Walmart or Amazon, for the two biggest examples. They have not been hurting at all through this.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been watching Walmart do some. My wife works for the company for 20 years. I've been watching crazy shit that they're doing from their, as far as their employees are concerned, but their bottom line keeps getting fatter. They are not hurting at all, and people are seeing that, but it's not going to stop them from sucking at the teat of these big corporations, just like they will the government.
Yeah, but it's like, to bring it back to your hand analogy and how you're saying how the corporations are going to bail them out later, I think when one goes to shit, the other one's going to go to shit. Like, they're both going to fail around the same time because, like I said, they're one and the same thing. Like, with the hand analogy, if I'm going through a hard time and I take $10 in my left hand and then put it in my right hand, I didn't enrich myself. So I think the same thing goes with the corporations. Yeah. Once the state starts going to shit and they start losing the ability to enrich themselves based off the state, they're going to go to shit as well. And also one of the big parts of this corporation issue, and we've seen it, is these corporations don't plan for the long term because they plan for government to bail themselves out. So when the government starts going to shit, the corporations are going to go to shit big time as well because they don't have anyone to bail them out. You know what I mean? They've set up their business plan to not take into account hard times. And that's part of the issue of this centralization, is that they always have the government teat to go on. They have not set up their business plan to account for that. So, if anything, Amazon's well known for operating on super small profit margins. That's like one of their business things, but they get so many kickbacks from the government. Like, the idea that they would be able to do that, I just think it's unrealistic. So,
well, I hope you're right. I mean, it's I keep looking at all the inflated prices, and I know in my heart of hearts that the amount of inflation that we're seeing in prices is not necessary, right? I mean, for every dime of inflation, 9 cents of that is just additional profit for them. Like, they need to inflate by 1 cent, not 10 cents, right? It's like, but they give them an inch, they go a mile, right? And that reliance is what I think is, when shit hits the fan, people out there, the sheeple, are going to be looking for someone to rely on, and if they
definitely true.
If they don't have faith in the government, and they don't have any idea that they can be self-reliant, who's left for them to rely on? If say a Walmart that says, you know what, we can lower our prices and make some of this stuff more affordable and still make shit tons of profit, because it was all a smoke screen in the first place. But I don't know. It's really tricky to me, which is why I want to, which is why I'm getting the fuck out of here anyway. It's just going because I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to buy vegetables and meat from anybody else anymore.
I don't know if you came to that conclusion completely organically, or if it was like as an instinct, or if it was as a result of the podcast, or whatever. But it's an obvious solution to everything that anytime you're looking, paying attention to the news, you're paying attention to who's doing what and money's going where, and at some point you just realize, man, this is fucked. This is not sustainable. I need to get out and try and opt out as much as possible. I think it is, a lot of it is instinctual. I think obviously liberty is the natural state of man. Freedom is a natural state of man. You're not just man in a vacuum is not under tyranny.
Right.
So,
well,
I think that's just kind of that's the human psyche leads towards anarchism, and it takes constant effort to bring them away from that.
Right. Well, I know that for myself, I've always been an empathetic person when it comes to, my American brothers and sisters, right? This is I look at it and I'm like, I don't want to see anybody struggling. I understand that it happens. You're going to have it in every society, right?
Of course.
But I don't want to see people trod upon either. But I'm having to make this shift in my mind where it's like, you got to stop giving a shit. Because unfortunately, people are just so inundated with so much news that now all they do is read headlines, and it's all shock and awe, shock value off headlines that people are responding to, and they're not educating themselves on what's actually happening, what moves are being made, and what's being said. So
it's a really good thing you're not on Twitter.
Right.
It's a really good thing you're not
Right.
on Twitter. Because the people that you come across, oh my god, man,
Right.
It's like quite literally insane.
And that is the part that saddens me about going and being self-sufficient and homesteading, is that I've got to give up a certain level of my empathy for my fellow man. I've just got to give that up.
Well, it's not. Well, I mean, empathy. Giving up empathy is not really necessary.
I gotta not give a shit about these other folks anymore. I mean, I can't feel bad for. I don't have the emotional value to invest in these fucking people anymore. You made your bed,
It might be just semantics, but I think you're talking about more about sympathy than.
Well, empathy. No, I mean, I feel the pain. I've been homeless. I know what it's like to not have anything, and I know what it's like to be underpaid or overworked, and all of these things that people are out there dealing with. I've even lived in ghettos and shit. It's like I get what you're saying. I feel your pain, but I don't want to feel it anymore. Because now our society is getting to this point where it's like, I really don't give a fuck what you have to say. Because you're not speaking from knowledge. You're speaking from headlines. You're speaking from moments.
Oh, that's the worst.
Right?
That's the worst. And then when people are just so smugly and arrogantly wrong, and then they tell you to educate yourself. Oh my god, you have no idea how much I want to slap the person. Like, they're lucky they're not in front of me, that they're just text on a screen.
Well, that's the beauty of Twitter, and kind of what I was getting at before with like divisiveness. Like, I take like shit like that, and I will just troll them, and like, because it's like I get to make a display of them to the world of like, look what a retard this guy is. And yes, they're gonna be smug about it and act like they're winning, but at the end of the day, like, and that's kind of what I was getting at, where like you can use this as a display to the world, be like, look at this idiot, and you get to take your people, further cement them in their stance, and then get to take him and his people, and then let them be more smug and let them go their stupid fucking way. Like, that's cool. Fair. I don't give a shit. I mean, I do. I care in a sense. At the end of the day, like, it's the whole like you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But like, so I'm here. I'm saying this shit all the time. That's a big part of my podcast, saying, hey, this is what's going on. Fucking, the end is nigh. Like,
see, I still naively believe that I can win an argument on the internet. I don't know why I believe this, because I know, like, deep down that it's not true.
Yeah, that's silly.
But I still try to, like, I'm going to win. This person's going to be like, you know what, John, you're right. You are correct about this.
Right, right. All you can do is walk away and go, wow, I was right. And not look at anything else that's said about it. And you just, I was right. That's all that matters, right? That's
my God.
That's how you do it these days.
It's so funny, because I'll be in the middle of it and just be like, why am I even fucking do, like, they got me again, basically. Like, man.
Well, I wish there was a way, that you could teach those people, or just show them the very simple truth of how it is to be someplace where you do your own thing, and you can walk an acre across your property over into, Farmer Joe's property, and go and take him a bushel of vegetables and walk home with a pound of meat or a couple of gallons of milk or whatever, and just, have a small conversation, talk about the crops, talk about the weather, just that, It's just, there's something so fucking relaxing and perfect about that,
because it's
that
simplistic.
these people can never grasp.
That's nice.
And I don't.
Yeah,
it's frustrating not being able to explain this to people or get this past these bullshit blinders they have up, whether they're red or whether they're blue, because neither fucking side is getting it right.
No, of course not. Yeah. I mean, they're just two sides of the same coin. Republicans and Democrats. I mean, the real difference is what color tie they wear, right? I mean, that's really about it.
At the end of the day, though, all you can do is control yourself, and that's. I mean, I know it sounds silly and sounds like some fucking shit you'd hear a motivational speaker say, but that is true, and that's kind of like what you're doing, Robert, where you're fucking. I've said this many times. You're going this like homesteading route and stuff like that. That's the way to go. It's like I don't remember who it is, or some philosopher says like you need to make your life like be so free that it's like an example to the world type deal. And that's the way to affect change, because at the end of the day, all you can do is affect yourself and then those around you, and like that's the place where you have the most influence. So and I think it kind of spreads out from there, because like no one exists in a vacuum. So I know a lot of people be like, say with like individualists or agorists or anarchists, you'd be like, oh, you're just gonna go live out in the woods, and it's like, I mean, this only makes sense if kinda, but this only holds up if you think that somehow you exist in a vacuum and no one else sees what you do. Like, because other people, it's going to put that notion in other people's minds. I mean, especially in today's day and age, you're still going to be online. So it's still like,
Not only that, but you think other people don't want to come live in the woods with me?
Yeah.
Right.
Someone does. At least one other person, right? Yeah. I mean, presumably if you have a spouse, right? That's at least one other person coming with you. That's two now taxpayers taken out of the system. Not to mention if you have, other people around you, other family members, friends, whatever.
Right. Well, that's why I keep trying to tell you. There's 10 acres right next door to me, $100,000.
I know.
You could be out there, John, right there beside me.
Talking about like spouses and
cuck whatever you want. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying that I can't make the decision completely on my own. Is all I'm saying.
Hey, you know what? I'm just saying.
Because if it was just me and I wasn't responsible at thinking about anyone else, yeah, I'd be there in a heartbeat for sure.
There's 3 good acres of growing land there in that 10 acres too. Yeah. 3 acres of solid food production. I'm just saying, you got room to run horses, cattle, the whole thing.
God, you have no idea.
Right? And if we're lucky, 5 years, I'm giving it 5 years, Florida's going to secede, or at least make a move for it.
I hope so.
I'm hoping. I'm keeping go Ron DeSantis. Go Ron DeSantis. Keep chopping away. Keep giving us a reason, and maybe we'll do it. Maybe, but if not,
that would be incredible. What would you think about? You said you lived in Florida too. What do you think about the free state of Florida?
I mean, in some senses that'd be tits, but like, I don't know. I don't really see it happening. I think he's probably more positioning himself to be a fucking, a future presidential candidate. Sure. So I don't see him making those type of moves. So, I mean, in some senses, I'm not a big fan of secession in some ways, but I do think in other ways it's a positive. I don't know. That's something I go back and forth on, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, I think being non-political will sometimes have those type of effects to where it will drive shit that way. Not to get into a whole other one, but I in some sense, I think that'd be kind of pretty fucking dope. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not a statist at all, but there's a lot of shit he's done that I'm like, all right, that's pretty cool.
Well, the rest of the country already sees us as the ball sack, so it's like, whatever.
Well, we're the swinging dick hanging off of America, shooting a load of freedom onto Cuba, right? That's right. So,
sorry, Susan.
But yeah. So, what are some of the things that you don't like about secession? That's what I would be interested in hearing about. Cause...
I mean, I don't know. I'm getting a little too tipsy for this. I've had too many beers, but I don't know. It's how do I articulate this right now? I don't know. It's just kind of like you're just creating a separate state that is. I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm not necessarily against it. I'm just not necessarily for it either. I don't have strong thoughts. I don't know.
Okay.
Like I know.
Does your love of country
and we're decentralized, right? So.
Does your love of country factor into that?
Oh, fuck no.
No?
It's just, I think in some senses you're kind of putting a target on yourself, and I think it can end it's very much a I don't know. It's a dangerous game going that route. We've seen how things have gone in the past. And I mean, I'm a fan of, that's why I said before, like a soft secession. Like if Ron DeSantis wanted to be like, if Ron DeSantis wanted to be like, hey, well, you know, whenever like they try to push through federal shit and they're like, nah, not doing it. And like they can be like, well, this is a federal law, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, no.
Right.
We have several counties in the state that are Second Amendment sanctuary counties. Right. So they won't, what's it called? Come on, help me, Robert. Words.
The sanctuary cities?
Yeah, they won't prosecute.
Yeah,
they won't do the bad thing.
Yeah, they won't. Right, they don't.
Certain ones.
Certain federal gun laws they ignore. But you know, I mean, that's, you know, I don't know.
That happens, man. I'll be on a roll and then just lose a word, just one word. It tripped me up. It's fucked up.
Right, but you know, the beauty of it is like that's what makes that what. You know, shitting in the face of the federal government is easy now because it's like whenever they do make a law and somebody like DeSantis says, no, we're not going to follow that. And they're like, oh, no, you got to follow it. Excuse me, then why haven't you been busting us for weed? Right? I mean, you're turning your blind eye to this shit.
Well, no, or what? You're going to piss off the mouse. Well, you don't want to piss off the mouse. You're not pissing him off.
But do remember, Jose, we put a bullseye. We already have a bullseye on us because, you know, every time there's a headline that says Florida man ... we've got a bull. I mean, you tell somebody you're from Florida, they're like,
it's a little different than being like, hey, we're breaking off from the federal government. There was a certain thing a few hundred years ago that it was a pretty good example of how they will fight tooth and nail and commit all sorts of genocide to keep people from breaking off from the union.
I think it's different here,
potentially,
because the Florida man headlines are a strategy, right? Because I've seen so many people be like, "Oh, can we just like get rid of Florida? Can we just get?" Well, like, yes, we should. Yes,
I'm willing to let you get rid of Florida. I'm willing.
I'm absolutely willing.
I mean, I've reached that point where, you know, I mean, you know, I mentioned love of country. I used to have a lot of love of country. I still love my country, but it's not the same country I fell in love with many years ago when I was a kid. You know,
I used to be like one of those, you know, patriot, like America, but at the same, but now I have to look around and I see the people that I'm supposed to call my countrymen, and that's not a good look.
Right.
I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like what I'm seeing at all.
All right. So on that note, we will let's go ahead and look at wrapping it up. So I tell you what, Jose, if you want, why don't you take a moment to give some self promo, tell these folks where they can find more of your wit and wisdom out there on the internet.
All right. Well, I mostly do an interview thing, so you don't have to worry about my wit and wisdom. I mostly rely on people better than me. So that's generally my. That's like one of the great things about an interview show. You just gotta be able to pull shit out of people. But I, like I said before, I have the No Way Jose podcast. I'm on YouTube. I'm also on Odyssey. I'm on just about every podcatcher there is. If you want to hit me up, if you want to talk to me, you can hit me up on email at thelibertymovementglobal@gmail.com. Or on Twitter, Gallison Jose, or you can type in Jose Gallison. It'll pop up either way. Definitely go check my shit out. My last episode that I just dropped was with Reed Coverdale and Clint from Liberty Lockdown. All three of us did an episode together, and we shot the shit about like lib unity and all that shit. So it's fun stuff. Go check me out. I don't think you'll regret it. I feel like I do a half decent job. I'm okay.
Yeah, definitely do.
Moderately neato.
I of course tried to do a little homework on you. I will say this, and now this is just me. I know it's probably just me.
I say the N-word too much. I know.
No. I happened.
No, not enough. Actually.
I happened to be watching one of your videos, and you were drinking a beer, and you were drinking a Pabst Blue Ribbon, and I was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
Whoa, hang on. There's nothing wrong with a PBR, man.
Fucking white boy summer.
That's right. There's nothing wrong with a PBR.
Hey, that's just me, old school, elitist, whatever you want when it
that
comes
is some
to.
elitist bullshit.
I mean, I had my share of Pabst Blue Ribbon when I was younger, but I was like, "What the fuck am I doing to myself?"
You're getting
like
fucked up.
A 4-pack of Tall Boys is like $5. You can't beat that shit, and I don't mind it. The older I get, the more I like cheap beer. I mean, man. I don't know.
Yeah, it's about getting fucked up. It's not about impressing anybody. Like,
No, I just really, it was just a joke. But I always, I always have fun with, I was like, oh man, maybe he is the redneck we've been looking for.
I'm white trash at my roots.
Right? Hey, there's nothing
yeah,
wrong with
man.
that. There's nothing
No,
wrong with
that's
that.
right.
So, John, now that Jose
Yes.
has plugged himself, could you plug us?
I will plug us. Bend over, Robert. Oh, okay. Yeah. So down in our description,
better
we
to
have
not
all of our
respond.
links to all of our stuff. We've got not only Jose's stuff, but we've got our Buy Me a Coffee. So, like I said earlier in the show, if you donate towards our goal, which is $100, only $100, and we're 40% of the way there now, I will be doing a drunk gaming stream with the supporters. So we'll be doing something like Cards Against Humanity or something of the like. Something I know everyone doesn't have every video game, so it'd be hard to kind of play games, but we can do card games and stuff. We have a drunk gaming stream with supporters. It's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you donate towards that. We also have an option on Buy Me a Coffee for a monthly donation, where there's 3 different tiers with different perks that you can get. So make sure you check those out and donate towards the ones that you like. Then we have our Discord server, which is a lot of fun, a lot of cool people in there. Also a good place to get notifications. If YouTube decides not to send a notification out, you'll get it there. Also on our Monday shows, if you want your videos to be shown on our Monday show, then you have to do it there. Submit your videos there. Sorry. And then we also have a Twitter at the GenGapP. Follow us on Twitter. We gained a bunch of followers today, which is awesome. So make sure that you are one of them, because Twitter is where I spend a lot of time, and you get to see my awesome hot takes and spiciness, and it's fun.
I don't like there's anything hot about you.
That's right, there is a lot that's hot about me.
All right, so we're going to get, don't forget, it is June. 2 big things happening this month. Of course, it's Pride Month. Let's not forget it's Pride Month. And I think Friday I'm going to take an opportunity to say how fucking fed up I am with it already. I'm just saying that. But don't forget, also this month we get our big UFO dump. The next crisis to be created is supposed to happen this month. I'm waiting, anticipating that to come out as well. I'm so excited. I can't wait to see what they generate off that. But we are going to be back on Friday at, I believe, 9:30 p.m. We're doing on Fridays now.
Yes.
This in a couple of days. That's Friday. That's 2 days away for our regular show. Then we'll be coming back at you on Monday at 9:30 as well for another episode of Fill in the Gap, to try and start your week off with a little bit of fun and humor. And then, of course, we'll be back a week from now for another rousing episode of Shooting the Shit, which is at 9:30 p.m. as well. All of those times are the Eastern time zone, not the one and only true time zone, not to be confused with the rest of the posers out there. You know who you are, and you know your time zone, so, get a life. But outside of that, much appreciation, right? Yeah. Much appreciation to everyone that showed up tonight, watching and talking. Sorry we didn't get to your chats, but you know how we are when we have a guest. We put our focus there because we can see them. Much love and thank you very much, Jose, for showing up tonight and talking with us. We're going to get the hell out of here. Everybody have a nice evening and much peace to you. Peace out.
Yep, see you guys.
Thanks for having me.